Picture the most beautiful prison ever built. Now fill it with 9,000 rooms, golden roofs that catch fire in the sunrise, and walls so red they look wet. Add the smell of sandalwood smoke, the smell of chamber pots carried at dawn, and 10,000 men who will never be fathers. That's the Forbidden City, the centre of the world according to everyone who lives in it. A place where the Son of Heaven eats from plates of solid gold, and where the man who carries those plates was sold by his own father for the price of a mule. A place where you could touch silk worth a village in the morning, and be beaten to death with a wooden pole by evening, and both things would be recorded in the same ledger, in the same careful handwriting. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists gawking at the throne halls. We're living it. One life, one man, from the inside. Everything he would have seen, smelled, feared, and survived. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I still don't know if anyone actually sleeps to them, or if you're all just lying in the dark listening to the details of Ming Dynasty castration like it's a lullaby. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. The knife is the first thing you remember clearly, not the journey to Beijing, not your father's face when he took the silver, not even the cold room, just the knife, curved slightly, small, sitting in a bowl of water that has pepper floating in it, and the old man saying in a voice as flat as a shop clerk counting coins, "Will you regret this or not?" You are 11 years old. You don't know what regret is yet. You know what hunger is. You know that the millet ran out in the second month and your little sister ate bark porridge and cried until she stopped crying, which was worse. You know that your father walked you 3 days to the capital, to a narrow house outside the Xuanwu gate, and that the man who owns this house is called a knifer, a Daozi Jiang, and that his family has done this work for generations, the way other families make noodles or shoes. Will you regret this or not, he has to ask. It's the rule. If you say yes, he sends you home, and your family keeps starving, honestly and completely. If you say no, he does his work, and if you die of it, no one can say you weren't asked. Your father is in the other room. He's not allowed to watch, or maybe he is not able to. You never ask him which. No, you say. Your voice sounds like someone else's voice. They have given you nothing for the pain except a bowl of nerve-numbing herb soup that tastes like mud and makes your tongue thick. They tie you to a low bed, a plank really, your arms and your legs, with strips of cloth that have been tied around other boys' arms and other boys' legs, hundreds of them, and the cloth is soft from all that use, and somehow that is the detail your mind chooses to keep forever. The softness of the restraints. The old man's hands are quick. That's his mercy. That's the only mercy on offer, and it is real. A slow knifer kills boys, a fast one saves them, and this man has been fast for 40 years. I'm not going to walk you through every second of it. You wouldn't want me to. And honestly, the boy on the plank doesn't remember it as seconds. He remembers it as one white flash of heat, like being branded everywhere at once. And then a voice from very far away saying that it's done. It's done. Stop screaming. It's done. What comes after the knife is what actually kills most boys. For 3 days, you're not allowed to drink. Not a drop. A plug of soft pewter goes where the wound is, and the wound is packed with paper soaked in cold water, and you lie on that plank in a room with 3 other boys who had it done the same week, and you burn. Your lips crack. Your tongue turns to leather. One of the boys, a small one from Shandong, cries for water on the second night. Quietly, politely almost. And then on the third night he doesn't cry anymore. and in the morning the knifer's assistant carries him out wrapped in the same reed mat they use for everything. You learn later that roughly 2 boys in 100 die under this knifer. Under worse knifers, it's 1 in 5. Your father, without knowing it, paid for the best surgeon your kind of poverty could reach. On the 3rd day they pull the plug. If urine comes, you will live. If it doesn't, you have perhaps a week, and it will be a very bad week. The old man watches you the way a farmer watches a sky that might rain, and when it comes, when your body works, he nods once, satisfied, professional, and says the sentence that will define the rest of your life. Congratulations, you can now serve the emperor. There is one more thing, and you need to understand it, because it hangs over everything that follows for the next 50 years. What was taken from you is not thrown away. It is cleaned, dried, sealed in a container, and hung on a high beam in the knifer's house. It is called your bao, your treasure, and it must be kept and eventually bought back from the knifer's family at a painful price, because when you die, it must be buried with you, placed in the coffin, made part of you again. Because if you are buried incomplete, the belief goes, you will arrive in the next world incomplete. The king of hell will look at you and not know what you are. Not man, not woman. A ghost with no category, turned away at every gate. 11 years old, lying on a plank too weak to sit up, and you already own a debt to your own body, hanging in a jar on someone else's beam. Welcome to the Forbidden City, in the 8th year of the Wanli Emperor. The year is 1580. You will spend the rest of your life inside walls. But not yet. First you have to get in, and getting in, it turns out, is its own small war. Here's what nobody tells the boys on the planks. The palace doesn't want most of them. Every year, thousands of boys and men are cut in licensed houses like the one outside Xuanwu Gate, and in unlicensed back rooms where the death rate doesn't bear thinking about. Some are cut as children by fathers making a bet. Some are grown men who cut themselves or have a brother do it out of pure desperation, gambling everything on one door into the world of the Fed. And every year, the palace takes in only a fraction of them. A few thousand at most in a good recruitment year. The rest become a floating population of half men around the capital, begging near the temples, sleeping under bridges, too mutilated to farm, too poor to bribe their way in, hated by everyone and pitied by no one. You do not become one of those men for one reason only. The knifer likes your handwriting. Your grandfather, before the family lost its land, before the floods, had been a village school teacher's son, and he had taught your father characters, and your father, in the winters when there was nothing else to do, had taught you, scratching them into the frozen dirt of the courtyard with a stick. You know, maybe 400 characters. In your village, that made you a scholar. In Beijing, it makes you nothing. But among a courtyard of freshly cut peasant boys who cannot write their own names, it makes you interesting. The knifer has connections. Of course he does. His family has been supplying the palace for 4 generations. His uncle served in the Directorate of Ceremonial. There are eunuchs of the 3rd rank who once lay on his father's plank. When the recruitment notice comes down in the spring, he puts your name on a short list, and he does it for free, which puzzles you until years later, when you understand that nothing in this world is free, and that a knifer who places boys well is a knifer that ambitious families seek out, and that you, without knowing it, walked into the palace as a piece of someone else's advertising. The examination happens in a cold hall near the Donghua Gate, the eastern gate of the palace, and it is the most humiliating morning of her life that has already included being tied to a plank. You stand in a line of boys, all of you stripped, while officials of the Directorate of Palace Servants walk the line and inspect you the way horse traders inspect horses. And I mean that exactly. They check your teeth. They check your eyes. They make you speak so they can hear whether your voice is clean. They check the cutting, all of it closely with a lamp, because there are men who try to enter with incomplete cuttings, and the punishment for discovering one inside the walls later is death for him and ruin for every official who passed him. The man inspecting you is himself a eunuch. Everyone here is a eunuch except the boys, and the boys are almost eunuchs, and you realize, standing naked in the cold, that you've entered a country populated entirely by your own kind, and that this fact comforts you not at all. Name: Li Chengzhong. Age: 12 this year. Read this. He holds up a strip of paper. You read it. It's a line from the Analects, one of the easy ones, the one about reviewing what you have learned. Your voice shakes on the last character, and the eunuch official looks at you with eyes that have seen 40 years of shaking boys, and writes something on his register, and moves on, and that's it. That's the whole moment. A brushstroke in a ledger you will never see, and your life pivots on it. 3,000 boys examine that season. Some hundreds taken. You're one of them. They shave the front of your head, dress you in a plain blue-grey robe of rough cotton that scratches at the neck, hang a wooden identity tag at your waist with your name and your new department burned into it, and march you through the Donghua Gate at dawn. And this is the part I want to slow down, because you will remember this walk on your deathbed. The gate tunnel is long and dark and cold, the walls close enough to touch on both sides, and it smells of damp stone and the vinegar they use to wash the guard rooms, and your cloth shoes make almost no sound, and the boy in front of you is crying without making any noise at all, his shoulders just moving, and then the tunnel ends and the light hits you and you are inside. You have heard the number 9,000 rooms your whole life, the way you've heard about dragons. Standing inside the walls for the first time, the number stops being a number. Golden roofs to the horizon, not gold paint. Glazed tile the colour of egg yolk, the imperial yellow that no one else in the empire is permitted to use. Rank upon rank of roofs, each one curved like a drawn bow, each ridge crowned with a procession of small ceramic beasts marching toward the sky. Courtyards paved in grey brick so vast that the far side blurs. Red walls, that deep arterial Chinese red, stretching away in perfect lines until perspective swallows them. And silence. That's the thing no one warned you about. A city of tens of thousands of people, and it is quiet as a temple, because inside these walls, noise is a privilege, and you have none. An old eunuch receives your group in a side courtyard. He is perhaps 60, dressed in better cloth than yours, with a face like a dried jujube, and a voice like gravel poured slowly. "Look down," is the first thing he says. All of you. Eyes down, now. 200 boys look at the paving bricks. Good. Learn to love those bricks. You will see more of them than anything else for the rest of your lives. Inside these walls, your eyes stay low, your voice stays low, your head stays low. You do not look at the faces of your superiors. You do not ever, under any circumstance, for any reason, look at the face of a member of the Imperial family. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not run except when ordered to run, and then you run as if your life depends on it, because it does. He walks the line slowly. His shoes make a soft shuffling sound, and you learn later that this too is deliberate, that senior eunuchs cultivate a particular gliding walk, silent, smooth, unthreatening, and that you will spend months learning it, walking with a bowl of water balanced on your head until the water learns not to tremble. You have entered the palace, the old man says. Understand what that means. Out there you were sons. Some of you were husbands. Out there you had villages, mothers, names that belong to families. In here, you are one thing. You are the emperor's slave. Everything you eat is his rice. Everything you wear is his cloth. When you sleep by his permission. And when you die, you will die by his permission, because plenty of you will die exactly that way. He stops in front of a tall boy who's made the mistake of glancing up. The old man doesn't shout. That's what makes it worse. He simply nods to two attendants, and they take the tall boy by the arms and walk him to the side of the courtyard, and one of them picks up a flat bamboo rod as thick as a thumb, and the boy is put face down on the bricks, and he's struck 10 times across the backs of his thighs, and the sound each blow makes is not a crack, but a heavy wet thud. And by the 4th blow, the boy is screaming, and by the 8th, he is not. And the whole time, the old eunuch keeps talking in the same gravel voice about the daily schedule, meal times, where the latrines are, as if nothing at all is happening. And this, you understand, is the lesson, not the beating. The talking through the beating. Pain in the palace is administrative. It is scheduled, measured, recorded, and completely without anger. That night you sleep in a long, low dormitory with 30 other boys on a brick sleeping platform, a kang, heated from beneath by a smoky flue, packed shoulder to shoulder under thin quilts, and the boy next to you whispers, "What department did they write on your tag?" You feel for the wooden tag in the dark. You can't read it with your fingers, but you heard the clerk say it out loud when he burned it in. "Directorate of Ceremonial," you whisper back, "writing office." The boy is quiet for a moment. Then he says with something between awe and hatred, "That's the good one. That's the one everybody's fathers prayed for." You lie in the dark, 12 years old, aching, homesick to the point of nausea, and you think about your father walking home alone with silver in his coat, and you think, "I had better make this worth it." You have no idea yet what worth it costs in this place. You will learn. Everyone learns. The palace is very, very good at teaching. Let me tell you what the mornings are like, because for the next 6 years your life is mornings. The drum on the tower beats the 5th watch while the sky is still black, somewhere around 4, and the dormitory comes apart all at once. No one waits, no one stretches. 30 bodies roll off the kang in the dark, and the air off the quilts is warm and thick with the smell of boys, and the air a foot above the quilts is cold enough to see your breath, and you dress in that 1-foot layer of cold, fingers clumsy, fumbling the cloth buttons of your robe, because the rule is that you are washed, dressed, and standing in the courtyard before the drum finishes its sequence, and the rule is enforced with the bamboo. The water in the washing basins has a skin of ice on it 4 months of the year. You learn to break it with the heel of your hand and splash your face fast. 2 strokes. Done. Because the boys behind you are waiting and there is exactly 1 basin for 10 of you. Your face stops feeling the cold after the first winter. Your hands never do. Your hands crack every winter of your life, the skin splitting at the knuckles in thin red lines that catch on cloth. And senior eunuchs can tell a man's department by his hands, the smooth hands of the ones who serve tea in warm halls, the cracked grey hands of the ones who haul water and coal, and the ink-stained, split-nailed hands of the writing offices, which are yours. Because here is the thing about being assigned to the Directorate of Ceremonial as a new boy. You don't touch a brush for 3 years. The Directorate of Ceremonial, the Seligian, is the most powerful of the 24 eunuch agencies, the one that handles the Emperor's documents, the one whose senior members read the memorials of the entire empire and stamp them with the Emperor's vermilion rebuttals, the one whose Grand Eunuch is sometimes, in whispered fact if never in law, the second most powerful man alive. And its school for boys, the palace school called the Neshutang, where eunuch students are taught by actual Hanlin scholars, the finest degree holders in the empire, condescending down to teach slaves, is your destination. But first you carry water. You carry coal in baskets slung from a shoulder pole, up before dawn to the storerooms by the western wall, where the coal dust hangs in the cold air and gets into the cracks of your hands and into your spit, and you carry the pole back with 60 pounds swaying at each end, and the pole bounces with each step in a rhythm you have to match or it will beat your shoulder raw, and you learn the rhythm. Everyone learns the rhythm, and the callus that forms on your right shoulder in the first year never fully goes away. 50 years later, dressing in the dark, your fingers will find that flat, hard patch of skin and remember the pole. You carry chamber pots. I want to be honest with you about this, because the histories are written by people who never had to do it. The palace produces the waste of tens of thousands of human beings and several thousand animals, and none of it can remain inside the walls past mid-morning, and none of it can ever, under any circumstances, be smelled by the wrong nose. So every morning there is a procession that no painting ever shows. Hundreds of boys and low eunuchs moving through the back lanes of the palace, the narrow service alleys between the high red walls where the sun never quite reaches, carrying sealed wooden pails toward the northern gate, walking fast, eyes down, and the smell in those alleys on a summer morning is a physical thing, a wall you walk through, and the trick an older boy teaches you is to breathe through your teeth and think about food, which sounds insane and works, and you learn the alleys. This matters more than you know. The Forbidden City that emperors see is a sequence of vast courtyards along a north-south axis, geometry and grandeur. The Forbidden City that eunuchs see is the capillary system behind it. Hundreds of narrow lanes, storerooms, well yards, kitchens, coal sheds, the whole hidden machinery pressed into the spaces between the ceremonial halls like flesh between bones. Within 2 years you can cross the entire palace without once entering a space a nobleman would recognize. You know which well has sweet water and which is brackish. You know the lane where the wind funnels so hard in winter it can knock a small boy down. You know which storeroom roof leaks and which senior eunuch takes bribes in vinegar, and which door hinge screams and must be lifted as it opens. You are becoming what the palace actually runs on. Not gold, knowledge of lanes, the food since you're wondering. Twice a day, morning and late afternoon from the great service kitchens, millet or rice depending on the season, steamed bread, salted vegetables, cabbage soup with enough pork fat floating in it to shine, and on festival days actual meat, fatty pork or mutton stewed soft. It is monotonous, and it is endless, and you must understand what endless means to a boy who watched his sister eat bark. You eat until your stomach hurts for the entire first year. Older eunuchs watch the new boys eat with an expression you will only understand when you're old and watching new boys eat. Half pity, half memory. You grow. That's the strange, tender, awful part. The palace feeds you better than your village ever could, and your body, cut as it is, takes the food and does what it can with it. You get tall. Eunuchs cut before puberty often do. The bones keep growing longer than they should, arms and legs stretching past the proportions of ordinary men. Your voice never breaks. At 12, that means nothing. At 16, standing in a lane while a delivery man from outside the walls, a whole man, smirks at the sound of you, it means everything, and you learn the eunuch's face, the smooth, pleasant, sealed face that shows nothing, and you wear it, and under it you're learning to hate in a slow, patient, filing system sort of way. Hatred organized like documents, because that is how everything is organized here. And at night, the palace school. Picture it. A plain hall in the northeast of the palace, 60 boys on benches, one iron brazier fighting the cold and losing, and at the front a Hanlin academician in his crane-embroidered robe, a man who ranked among the top scholars of the whole empire in the examinations, teaching characters to slaves because the roster says he must. Some of these scholars despise you openly and teach with contempt, reciting at the ceiling. But some, and this is one of the things about human beings that you will never quite get over, some of them look out at 60 mutilated peasant boys and see students and teach like it matters. Master Shen is one of those. He is small, round-shouldered, ink permanently in the creases of his fingers, and he teaches the analects and the histories, and crucially the practical forms, how memorials to the throne are structured, the honorifics, the taboo characters that may never be written because they occur in emperors' personal names, the exact width of the top margin, the vermilion conventions, dry things, life and death things, in a palace where a wrongly formed character in the wrong document is a flogging offence. One evening, the second winter, he keeps you after the others leave. Your stomach drops through the floor because being kept behind by anyone ever means punishment. He slides a sheet of your practice characters across the desk, taps one. Who taught you to hold the brush? My father, master, with a stick in the dirt. He's quiet for a moment, looking at the character, which is the character for endure. In the dirt, he repeats. Then he looks at you, actually at you, which superiors do not do, and says, "Listen to me once, and never repeat that I said it. This palace is full of men with power and no learning, and outside these walls the empire is full of men with learning and no power. The ones who rise in here are the ones who have both. Your body was decided for you. Your hand was not. Do you understand? Yes, master, you don't, but you will. Copy that character 500 more times." He gathers his papers and shuffles out into the cold, an old man in a magnificent robe, and you sit alone in the freezing hall grinding ink, and the ink stick scrapes against the stone in small circles, a wet, gritty whisper, and the brazier ticks as it cools, and you copy the character for endure until your hand cramps into a claw, and you have to pry the brush out of it with your other hand. And this, though you don't know it yet, is the single most important evening of your life. Because 3 years later, when the copying examinations are held, when 140 boys kneel at low desks in a courtyard and transcribe a sample edict while clerks with cold eyes walk the rows, your sheet comes back with the circle at the top. Not a comment, just a circle in vermilion. You're assigned as a copyist of the 8th grade to the document rooms of the Directorate of Ceremonial. You're 15 years old. You now work in the room next to the room next to the room where the empire is actually run. And that is where you meet Eunuch Wei, and where your life, which you thought had already had its catastrophe, discovers what catastrophe is really for. The document rooms occupy a range of buildings in the northeastern quarter of the palace, and the first thing that strikes you, reporting on your first morning in a new robe with a new tag, is the smell. Ink, obviously, that deep pine soot smell that will be in your clothes for the rest of your life. But under it, paper. Tens of thousands of documents, bundled, boxed, shelved to the rafters, and old paper has a smell, dry and faintly sweet, like a field in autumn, and dust, and the camphor placed among the boxes against insects sharp and medicinal. Close your eyes anywhere in the Empire, and let someone open one box from these rooms under your nose, and you would know exactly where you were. The second thing that strikes you is the quiet, which is a different quiet from the courtyards. It is a working quiet. 40 men at desks, and the only sounds are brushes, which make almost no sound, just the faintest dry kiss of hair on paper, and the ink sticks circling on the stones, and the rustle when a finished sheet is lifted and laid on the pile, and the shuffle of the runner's shoes, and somewhere always, at any hour, the small percussion of an abacus, tack, 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 as some clerk somewhere reconciles some account, because everything in this palace is an account. Understand what flows through these rooms, every memorial from every official in the Empire, from the Grand Secretaries down to a magistrate in a fever-ridden southern county reporting a rice levy, funnels toward the throne, and the Wanli Emperor is a young man who, year by year, is losing interest in reading them. So the documents pool here in the Directorate of Ceremonial, where the senior eunuchs, the ones with the title Bingby, holders of the brush, read them and summarize them, and, when the emperor cannot be troubled, which is more and more, apply the vermilion endorsements themselves. Slaves, wielding the most powerful brush on earth, in careful imitation of a man who would rather be elsewhere. You're nowhere near that brush. You are a copyist. You sit at a low desk near the cold end of the hall, and your job is duplication, fair copies of drafts, register copies of endorsed documents, copies for the archives, copies for the offices, copies of copies. Your quota is measured in sheets per watch. Your errors are measured in strokes, and the tolerance for error is 0, not as a figure of speech. A copyist who mars a character scrapes the sheet, or starts again at his own time's expense. A copyist who lets an error leave the room is beaten. A copyist whose error reaches an imperial eye is finished, and finished is a word with a range of meanings here, all of them bad. So let me give you the physical truth of the work, since the work is now your body's whole life. You sit at the desk, and within the first month your knees and ankles reshape themselves around the position, and there is a specific ache, a deep bone ache on the tops of the feet that every copyist has and no one else in the world has, and 40 years later 2 old eunuchs meeting as strangers could identify each other by the way they rise from sitting. The brush is held vertical, the arm's weight suspended, never resting, and the muscle along the top of your right forearm hardens into a ridge. In winter the ink thickens and must be warmed. The stone's set near the braziers, and there is a boy whose entire job is circulating warm stones, and the moment of exchanging a cold stone for a warm one, cupping it, the heat flooding the split skin of your hands, is a pleasure so sharp it is almost shameful. In summer the sweat runs down your forearm, and you bind your wrist in cloth so it cannot reach the paper, because a drop of sweat on an official sheet blooms like a wound and the sheet is dead. You copy edicts about flood relief in provinces you cannot picture. You copy troop rotations for garrisons on a frontier you will never see. Silver figures with strings of zeros that mean nothing and then, as the months pass, begin to mean things, because you cannot copy the Empire's paperwork 10 hours a day without the Empire assembling itself in your head. This is the secret nobody plans. The copyists know everything, not the way ministers know it in arguments and principles. The way a body knows things. You know grain prices are wrong in Henan because your hand has copied the word Henan too many times this season. You know a purge is coming in the censorate because the denunciations have changed tone, and tone is a thing your brush picks up before your mind does. Eunuch Wei runs your copying hall. He is perhaps 50, a big man gone soft with heavy eyelids that make him look asleep and a small red mouth like a carp. He holds the 6th grade. He's been in the document room since before you were born, has risen exactly as far as he will ever rise, knows it, and has converted the pain of knowing it into a management style. Wei does not beat people especially often. What Wei does is keep accounts. Every favour, every error, every debt, every weakness of every man in his hall is written in the ledger behind those sleepy eyes, and he collects with interest on his own schedule. Within a week he's noted you, the boy with the circle on his examination sheet, the boy Master Shen kept behind. Within a month he has assigned you the worst desk, coldest, darkest, furthest from the Stone Boys circuit, and doubled your quota, and this is not hostility. You eventually understand. This is appraisal. He is stress testing an asset, and within a year he calls you to his office, which smells of camphor and the dried tangerine peel he chews, and pushes a document across the desk without a word. It's a memorial from a censor in Nanjing. Mid-importance. Routine handling. Accept a fair copy of it. Has to reach the office of the Grand Eunuch of the Directorate by the evening watch, and the assigned copyist is sick or drunk, or, knowing this hall, sick from drink. Your hand is clean, Wei says, meaning your calligraphy. Is it fast? It can be, sir. It will be. He looks at you with the sleepy eyes fully open for once, and they are not sleepy at all. The Grand Eunuch's office notices hands, boy. It notices hands the way you notice faces. Every sheet that goes up is a small audition, whether the copyist knows it or not. Most don't know it. Now you do. Consider what the knowledge cost me to acquire, and consider that I have given it to you free, and consider what free means in this palace. Nothing. Free means nothing exists. You are 15 and you already know that. Yes, sir. Go and write. You go and write 2,000 characters by lamplight, your whole mind narrowed to the width of a brush tip, the runner standing at your shoulder for the last 100, and the sheet goes up the hill to the offices near the Chengqing Gate, while the drums beat the first night watch, and nothing happens. No word comes back, and nothing continues to happen for a month, and then quietly, in the 10th month, your name appears on a transfer list. Copyist of the 7th grade, document rooms, inner section. The inner section stands 30 steps closer to the vermilion brush than the hall you started in. 30 steps. Understand the scale of a palace life. Men spend a decade earning 30 steps. That night, lying on the Kang, an older copyist named Old Pang, who has been in the 7th grade for 22 years and will die in it, speaks into the dark without turning his head. We sold you up the hill. You know that. Sold me. A good hand, delivered to the inner section with his name on the delivery. He'll collect on you for the rest of his life. Every year you rise, his stock rises. You're not a person to him, boy. You're a grain investment. You lie there listening to the wind cross the roof tiles, that low fluting sound the palace makes on winter nights. 10,000 roof edges combing the wind, and you think about it, and you find, to your own surprise, that you don't mind. A grain investment is fed, stored dry, and protected from rats. In your village you weren't worth protecting from anything. Old Pang, you ask the dark, what happened to the boys who came up with you? Your year. The pause is long enough that you think he's asleep. 40 of us in the writing track, he says finally. 9 dead of illness. The palace breeds fevers in summer, you'll see. 4 beaten out to the Imperial tombs for errors, which is a living death, sweeping a dead emperor's courtyard until you join him. 2 executed in the Troubles when the old emperor died. Wrong patron, wrong week. 1 drowned himself in the well by the gate of earthly tranquility, and they filled in that well, not for grief, for ritual pollution. The rest of us are still here. Copying. The wind combs the roofs. Sleep, says old Pang. The drum comes early and it doesn't care what you learn tonight. Now I need to tell you about money, because if you think a slave has no economy, you have never met 10,000 slaves locked in a square mile with the richest family on earth. Your salary exists. That's the first surprise. A copyist of the 7th grade draws a monthly allowance of rice and a few strings of copper cash, and it is not nothing, and it is also not the point. The point is everything around the salary. Everything in the palace leaks, not through theft, or not mainly, theft is death, but through the 10,000 small frictions of an enormous household. The kitchens draw supplies for 100 banquets a year that are ritually required and barely eaten, and the untouched dishes flow backward through the service lanes in a grey market so old and so organised it has price conventions. The storerooms write off silk as damp damaged at rates that have nothing to do with the weather. Candle ends, and the palace burns candles by the ton, belong by ancient custom to the eunuchs of the halls where they gutter, and there are men outside the walls who deal in nothing but palace candle ends, and there are eunuchs inside the walls who have grown quietly rich on wax, and information leaks. That's the real currency. A eunuch who knows which official's memorial was received warmly can sell that warmth in the capital's tea-houses, through a cousin, through a knifer's nephew, through the whole soft tissue of connection that ties the sealed palace to the city around it. A eunuch who knows the emperor's mood on a Tuesday holds a commodity that grand ministers will pay for. You are a copyist. Your hands pass through more information in a month than a provincial governor sees in a year. The first time a senior colleague suggests in the mildest possible language over tea that a certain phrase from a certain memorial would be worth a certain amount to a certain person, you feel the ground open under your feet. Because here is the arithmetic they don't write in the regulations, and every eunuch does it lying awake at night. You have one body, and it is mutilated, and it will grow old. You have no sons to feed you in age, no daughter-in-law to nurse you, no family altar where your tablet will stand. The palace feeds you while you serve. When you cannot serve, the palace forgets you with a completeness that healthy young men cannot imagine, and old discarded eunuchs die in temple charity wards on the city's edge, and every eunuch has seen them because young eunuchs are taken to see them, on purpose, the way apprentices are shown industrial accidents. So every string of cash you can gather is not greed. It is the son you will never have. Silver is your child. The whole 10,000-man economy of skimming and selling and hoarding that outsiders sneer at, the greedy eunuchs, the corrupt eunuchs, is a city of the childless building, coin by coin, the only old age that will ever hold them. And there is the bow, your treasure, in its sealed container, on the knifer's beam outside Xuanwu Gate. The knifer's family keeps it, generation to generation, and when you are ready, when you have risen and saved, you buy it back, and the price is brutal and everyone pays it, because to die without it is to be a beggar at the gates of the next world too. Some eunuchs pay in instalments across 30 years. It is, when you think about it clearly, which you try not to, the purest business model ever devised. Sell a man back the piece of himself you removed at compound interest. You decline the tea house suggestion that first time, politely, deniably, not out of virtue, you're honest enough with yourself to know that, but out of a copyist's feel for documents. The phrase in question came from a memorial touching the frontier armies, and frontier information is the kind that gets men not beaten but beheaded, and the colleague suggesting it has soft hands and a new fur collar and the particular brightness of a man spending money he shouldn't have yet. 8 months later, that colleague is arrested at the Donghua Gate, with copied passages sewn into his boot lining. You never learn who informed. You are called, along with every man in the inner section, to stand in the North Service courtyard on a grey morning and watch what the Eastern Depot does with him. And I will spare you what the Eastern Depot does with him, except to say that it takes a long time, and that it is designed to take a long time, and that the watching is not optional. Attendance is taken. A clerk moves down the rows with a register and a brush. Take your name. Take the next man's. The abacus rhythm of the palace, keeping its accounts even here, especially here. That evening Eunuch Wei finds you in the archive lane. He falls into step beside you, hands in his sleeves, and for a while says nothing, and the lane smells of camphor and coal smoke and the cold metal smell that means snow is coming. You were offered his tea, Wei says. Not a question. Your heart stops. Sir, I know what you never. If you had ever, you would be attending your own gathering this morning instead of his. He walks. The carp mouth almost smiles. You want to know how I know you were offered, boy. I know when the sparrows on the eave tiles are offered. It is my single skill. I was never the best hand in this hall, and I will die in the 6th grade, and I have outlived every brilliant man of my year, because brilliance is legible, and I am not. He stops, turns, and for the second time in your life you get the sleepy eyes fully open. 3 rules, since today you're frightened enough to actually hear them. 1. Never touch frontier documents, tax documents, or anything with the heir apparent's name in it. Not for any price. There is no price. Prices are for things that have survivors. 2. When you refuse, refuse stupidly. Let them think you too dull to understand the offer. A dull man is safe to leave alive. A virtuous man is an accusation with legs, and accusations get removed. 3. He glances up the lane, both directions, an old habit so worn it looks like stretching a stiff neck. Choose your patron before your patron is obvious. By the time everyone can see who is rising, the places at his feet are taken. The men who rise with a great man are the ones who knelt to him while he was still nothing, when kneeling was still a risk. That is the entire game, boy. Everything else in this palace is furniture. Snow starts to fall while he speaks. The first of the year, tiny dry flakes ticking against the roof tiles, and he looks up at it with his carp face and says, in an entirely different voice, the voice of a fat old man who feels the cold, and it begins again. 51 winters I have watched this courtyard fill with snow. Then he shuffles off down the lane, and the snow settles on the golden roofs and the red walls, and grey and gold and red and white, The palace arranges itself into the painting it always secretly is, and you stand there with your cracked hands pushed into your sleeves, 17 years old, understanding at last that you're not living in a household. You're living on a board, and the pieces that survive are not the strongest ones. They are the ones that know whose hand is about to move. The years take on the palace shape, which is to say the shape of ritual, because inside these walls even time is a ceremony. The year turns on festivals the way a wheel turns on an axle. New Year, when the whole palace is scrubbed for a month beforehand, when you and every other man below the 4th grade spend days on your knees with brick dust and rags, polishing the bronze door studs, thousands of them, each one the size of a steamed bun, until your reflection stretches golden and warped across each dome, and the cold of the bronze goes through the rag, through your fingers, into the bones of your hands, and stays there until summer, the emperor's birthday, when the halls fill with officials in their finest ranks, and you learn that the great ceremonies seen from the inside are mostly waiting. Hundreds of men holding perfect stillness in perfect lines for hours, while the cold climbs their legs, and eunuchs positioned behind pillars whose entire duty is to catch, quietly, the elderly officials who faint. The Qingming festival for the dead, when eunuchs with families they remember burn paper money in the service courtyards facing the direction of home, and you burn yours facing south-southwest, toward a village you've not seen in 6 years, for a grandmother whose face is becoming, no matter how hard you press on the memory, a smear of warmth with no features left. And your body keeps its own calendar now. Your beard never comes. Your skin stays smooth in a way that other men's does not, and you develop in your 20s the eunuch's particular build, the long limbs from the late closing bones, the softness settling at the hips and chest no matter how lean the rest of you stays, and your face begins, slowly, to become the face strangers will read at a glance for the rest of your life. There are wrinkles eunuchs get that other men don't, fine and early, a cross-hatching around the mouth. On the street, when you are sent on document business to the offices outside the walls, children sometimes follow you, and once a drunk outside a wine shop calls out the ugly word, Lao Gong, in a falsetto, and his friends laugh, and you keep walking with the sealed face while the porter walking beside you. A whole man, kind in his way, pretends with tremendous concentration to study the roofline. Here is what I want you to understand about that moment, because it is the true centre of this whole life, more than the knife, more than the palace. The empire needs you and despises you at the same time, and it has organised this contradiction into a system. The scholar officials write essays about eunuchs as a species of vermin, a recurring disease of dynasties, and they are not entirely wrong. History keeps the receipts, but they write the essays with paper that eunuch agencies procured. In post they hold partly because some eunuch's summary of their memorial was fair, in a state that could not function for 1 week if the 24 agencies stopped. You are the empire's hands, and the empire's deepest wish is to never have to look at its hands. Confucius said the body is received from the parents and must not be damaged, and so the ideology of the entire civilization holds as a first principle that you are a broken vessel, a filial crime made flesh, and then that same civilization runs its sacred centre on 100,000 of you, because the logic is airtight and monstrous. Only a man with no sons can be trusted alone among the emperor's women, because only a man with no sons has no dynasty of his own to scheme for. No sons. That is the wall behind every other wall. You're 24 when it finds you personally the way these things do, sideways, on an ordinary evening, there is a laundress. I will not make this a romance because it wasn't one, or not yet, or not exactly. The palace women's service staff and the eunuchs live in adjacent worlds, and there is a custom, old, tolerated, never written down, called dushi. Vegetable households, they are sometimes mocked as, where a eunuch and a palace woman pair off. They share meals, they mend each other's clothes. He saves his allowance for her hairpins. She sits with him when he is sick. It is marriage with the centre cut out of it, and the palace looks away because 10,000 people with nothing to love are more dangerous than 10,000 people with something. Her name is Ruyi, and she works in the starching rooms, and her forearms smell of rice starch, faintly sweet, like cooked grain going cold, and she has a way of blowing hair off her face without using her hands because her hands are always wet, and the first time she laughs at something you say in the well lane in autumn, with the persimmon light coming over the western wall, you stand there afterward alone, a grown man in a slave's robe, shaking slightly, and you cannot name what is wrong with you, and what is wrong with you is hope, arriving very late into a body that had filed it under closed accounts. You share the 10th month's moon cakes with her, sitting on the well, coping in the dark, splitting them with your document knife, and she asks about your village, and you ask about hers, and hers is gone. Flooded the year she was sold to the palace. The whole village moved somewhere she has never been told, so that she's homesick for a place that no longer exists. And you think, but do not say, that every single person inside these walls is homesick for something that no longer exists, that the palace is a museum of amputated pasts, and that maybe that is what all the gold is for. To be so bright you stop looking backward. Old Pang says you'll make the 5th grade before 30, she says, licking sweet bean paste off her thumb. He says your hand is on documents that go all the way up now. Old Pang talks. Old Pang is proud of you. He'd die before he said it. She looks at you sideways in the dark. So would you rather I didn't say things either? Is that how you want it? 2 more sealed faces. The well breathes its cold mineral breath beside you. Somewhere over the wall a watchman's clapper marks the 2nd watch. 2 dry knocks, and the sound travels along the lanes the way sound does at night here, sliding on the stone. No, you say. It comes out rough. 2 more sealed faces is exactly how everyone wants it, how the palace trains it, and you are so tired, so suddenly catastrophically tired of the training. No, say things. So she says things, that winter and the winters after. And you, who copy 10,000 characters a week of other men's words, slowly find a small store of your own. I would like to leave you there a while, on the well coping in the persimmon dark. But you already know the palace better than that by now. You know that inside these walls, everything you have is held on loan, and that the palace calls in its loans without notice, and that the more precious the thing, the sharper the instrument used to collect it. Because in your 28th year, the Emperor's favourite consort loses a jade cup, and the search for it will burn through the inner court like a lamp knocked into straw, and it will reach the document rooms, and it will reach you, and it will teach you the final lesson of this place, the one they cannot teach in the palace school, the one every eunuch learns exactly once. What it feels like when the machine you serve turns its face, its whole vast golden face toward you, and asks you a question to which it has already decided the answer. But before the cup I have to show you a night duty, because you cannot understand what fear is in this palace until you have stood a night watch inside it, and by your late 20s you stand them often, because documents do not stop at dusk, and the inner section keeps a rotation of hands available through the watches for urgent copying, and urgent in the Wanli reign increasingly means one thing. The emperor has finally, at some strange hour, looked at his paperwork. Understand the situation above your head. The Wanli emperor came to the throne as a boy of 9. He was raised under the most formidable tutor minister of the age, drilled and corrected and managed, and when that minister died and was posthumously disgraced, something in the young emperor closed like a door. By the time you're standing night watches, he has begun his long withdrawal. The strangest act of passive resistance in imperial history. A son of heaven who, for years and then decades, will simply decline to hold audiences, decline to fill vacant offices, decline to come out. The ministers wail in memorials that pile up unanswered. The empire runs on momentum and on the 24 agencies, and the palace at night becomes the only place the emperor truly lives, a nocturnal country with a population of 1, plus the thousands of shadows who serve him. So, a night watch, the 3rd watch, past midnight, midwinter. You sit in the duty room of the inner section with 2 other copyists and a runner, 1 lamp lit of the room's 6 because lamp oil is accounted, and the brazier burned down to its last warmth, and you are copying nothing, waiting, which is most of night duty, listening to the palace. And the palace at night is loud in a way daylight people never learn. The cold works on the buildings. The great timber halls tick and groan as the beams contract. Sharp knocks from the dark roof spaces overhead, random, like footsteps taking single steps. Roof tiles shift with small ceramic chimes. The wind comes down the lanes in pulses, and where it crosses the courtyards it lifts fine snow off the bricks with a hiss, like something being dragged. Foxes live inside the walls, generations of them, and their cry, if you've never heard it, is a woman screaming. Exactly that. There is no comforting percentage by which it is not that sound, and the first time you heard it at 13, you bit through your lip. Now you just note it. Fox, northwest, by the storerooms, and everyone, from the newest boy to the Grand Eunuch himself, believes the palace is full of ghosts. Of course it is. Count the dead. Builders crushed under the great logs floated from Sichuan forests. 200 years of executed servants, poisoned consorts, strangled favourites, the well by the gate of earthly tranquillity that they filled in, the wells they didn't. The lanes have names the maps don't show. There is a stretch behind the western storerooms that runners will add 300 steps to avoid after the 4th watch, and when you were young you thought this was peasant foolishness, and now you walk the 300 steps too. Not because you have decided ghosts are real, but because you have decided the question is not worth testing alone in the dark at your rank. Tonight, the runner comes for you at the deepest hour, a summons. Hands needed at the Jiangqing Palace precinct. The Emperor is awake and wants documents read and copied. You've been inside the precinct before, but never at night, and your stomach knots as you follow the runner's lantern through the lanes, your breath clouding, the snow squeaking under your shoes in the specific way of the coldest nights, a tight rubbery squeak, and the walls slide past dark red-black in the lantern light, and then the gate, and the passwords, and the body search, quick professional hands patting your robe seams, because no blade larger than a document knife passes this gate. And then you are inside the Emperor's own courtyard under a sky with a wolf-toothed moon. You do not see his face. Let's be clear about how this works. You kneel in an outer chamber with your portable desk, and documents come out to you through a chain of higher eunuchs, and the Emperor is a presence 2 rooms away. A rhythm of low voices, a cough, once a laugh, strangely young, and the whole apparatus of your night orbits. That cough the way the court astronomers say the lesser lights orbit the greater. The chamber is warm, shockingly warm, braziers everywhere, the charcoal the special kind that burns without smoke, and after the frozen lanes the warmth makes your ears burn and your fingers ache as they thaw, and you grind ink and you wait and you look, because your eyes have nowhere else to be, at the floor. The floor is gold bricks. Not gold, that's the name. Jinjuan. Gold bricks. Clay tiles from Suzhou. Fired for months. Soaked in oil. Polished until they hold light like still water. Each one, the saying goes, costs its weight in the metal it's named for. Kneeling on them in the warmth, in the middle of the night, in the middle of the world, you can see the lamp flames standing upside down in the floor, little golden women dancing under the surface, and you think of your father's house, the floor of pounded earth that turned to grease in the wet season, and you feel the vertigo that is the truest sensation this palace produces, the sheer vertical distance packed into a single life, and then a document is set before you, and the night becomes work. What the Emperor wants copied, it turns out, is not war or taxes, it is a genealogy. Pages of the Imperial clan register, names and titles of princes' stipends, and you copy princes' allowances until your hand cramps while the Empire's actual crises moulder, unanswered in boxes down the hill. And this is the reign you serve in, and everyone in the chamber knows it, and no one's face says anything at all. Near dawn, waiting for the last sheet's ink to set, you witness one small thing. An old eunuch, very senior by his robe, 4th grade at least, comes out of the inner rooms carrying a tray with a teapot, and he is old, past 70, hands with that fine constant tremor, and at the threshold his foot catches the raised sill, and the tray tips, and the pot slides. And a younger eunuch beside him, without appearing to move quickly, without appearing to move at all, is somehow there, and the pot is caught, and the tray is level, and the old man has not fallen, and the entire event has made no sound whatsoever. And the two of them exchange a look, 1 second, and the young one inclines his head a half-inch, and they proceed as though nothing happened, because officially nothing did. An old servant dropping the Emperor's teapot on the golden floor at dawn is not a mishap. At this altitude it is an omen, a scandal, possibly a flogging, possibly the end of 50 years of service in one wet crash. The young man has just, with one silent hand, saved the old man's entire life, and the price of the saving is that it must never be visible, never be thanked, never have occurred. Walking back down the lanes in the grey dawn, past the sweepers already out with their twig brooms making their long shh strokes across the courtyards, you understand that you've seen the palace's whole moral universe in that half-second. Kindness exists here, real kindness, and it is adapted to the environment like the foxes, becoming nocturnal, silent, and officially non-existent. You sleep 3 hours and stand your day shift. Your eyes feel like they've been rolled in sand. Old Pang looks at you across the desks at the particular grey of your face and knows exactly where you were last night, and pushes across without a word half of a sesame cake he's been saving, and you eat it over your inkstone, and it is the best thing you have ever tasted. And you are 27 years old, and you have perhaps 11 days left of the life you know, because it is the 12th month, and in the Emperor's private quarters, in a lacquer cabinet inlaid with mother-of-pearl cranes, sits a small cup carved from mutton-fat jade, tribute from Khotan, a cup the favourite consort drinks her medicine from, and on the 9th day of the 12th month, when a serving woman opens the cabinet, the cup is not there. You hear about it the way you hear about everything, through the lanes, hours before anything official moves. A water carrier tells a stove tender who tells the stone boy who whispers it down the desks with the morning's warm ink stones. A jade cup is missing from the Yikan Palace, the consort's own quarters, noble consort Zheng's quarters. The desks go quiet in a new way. Not working quiet, held breath quiet. Because everyone at those desks can do the political arithmetic. Noble consort Zheng is the most dangerous woman in the empire, and I don't mean that as a slander on her character, I mean it as a location. She stands at the exact point where the whole reign's pressure has concentrated. The emperor loves her, actually loves her, in a court where love is a foreign substance. She has a son. The emperor also has an older son by another woman, and the entire officialdom of the empire, thousands of scholar ministers, are locked with the throne in a grinding years-long war over which boy will be heir. A war that will eventually be called the struggle over the root of the state. Everything that touches consort Zheng touches that war. A missing hairpin in her palace is politics. A missing tribute jade cup is a weapon lying in the open, waiting for someone to pick it up and decide whom to cut with it. And the person who picks it up is the Directorate of Ceremonial's rival, the Eastern Depot. Let me tell you what the Eastern Depot is, in case the name has been sliding past you. It is the palace's secret police, run by eunuchs, answering past every ministry directly to the throne, with its own prisons, its own interrogators, and its own famous style. The depot's men move through the capital in plain clothes, and its prison entrance is decorated, this is true, with a plaster relief of a Zieji, the mythical beast that can smell guilt. The depot does not really find truth. The depot manufactures certainty, which is a different product, and delivers it upstairs with a bow. And the depot's current director has been feuding with your directorate's senior men for 3 years over appointments, and everyone above the 6th grade knows it. And so when word comes down that the depot has been given the cup investigation, and that the depot's line of inquiry runs, of all the directions it could run toward the document rooms, no one in your hall thinks for one moment that this is about a cup. Why the document rooms? Here is the thread, and notice how thin it is, and remember its thinness later. Inventory registers of tribute items are archived in your section. A page of the Khotan Jade Register was recalled for copying in the 10th month. Routine, a smudged sheet being refreshed. The copyist who handled it sat at the desk beside yours. His name is Little Deng. He is 19. He has a stammer that vanishes when he sings, which he does very quietly over his inkstone, old songs from Shanxi, and he once traded you 2 brushes for your festival wine ration because he doesn't drink, and his hand is mediocre, and his heart is as simple as bread. The theory the depot assembles is this. Someone with access to the register altered or studied the cup's inventory entry to cover a theft to order. Jade of that grade being pre-sellable to collectors in the south. And the recall of that page in the 10th month was the preparation. It is the kind of theory that sounds airtight in a report and is made entirely of air. Pages are recalled for recopying every week. 40 men had access. The cup sat 2,000 feet and 11 locked doors away from any of you. It doesn't matter. The theory has a virtue that outweighs all its defects. Every step of it walks through the Directorate of Ceremonial's territory, and every day it stays alive. Your Directorate's leadership bleeds standing. On the 13th day, they take little Deng. They take him at the shift change, in front of everyone, which is the point. 4 men in plain, dark clothes who walk in with the calm of people whose authority is total, and the hall's 40 brushes stop, and Deng stands up at his desk, knocking his water dropper over, and the water runs across his sheet, ruining 400 characters of the afternoon's work. And that is what he looks at, the ruined sheet. That is what his mind grabs as they take his arms, and he says, stammering, The sheet, I have to, the sheet is due. And one of the depot men says, not unkindly, and the not unkindness is the most frightening thing you've ever heard. You don't have to worry about the sheet anymore. The hall works on. What else is there? The brushes resume, one by one, yours among them, and your characters that afternoon are perfect, absolutely perfect. Terra is a magnificent calligraphy teacher, and beside you Deng's ruined sheet dries slowly, the water stain contracting hour by hour like something dying, and no one moves it, because touching it means being the man who touched it. You do not sleep that night. On the Kang, in the dark, you take out your own memory and interrogate it yourself before anyone else can. Did you ever handle the jade registers? Yes, twice, years apart, logged both times. Did you know Deng handled the recalled page? Yes, you sat beside him. Did you speak with him about it? You spoke with him about everything. He sings Shan-Shi songs. Of course you spoke. Has anyone seen you two together? Everyone, every day, for 3 years. And then the other inventory, the one that makes your hands go cold under the quilt. What else are you carrying? Rui, the vegetable household, tolerated, unwritten, deniable, until the day some interrogator needs a lever, and then it is not a small warm secret. It is undeclared conduct with palace women, and it can be inflated to any size the report requires. Weighs private lessons in the lane. Master Shen's this palace is full of men with power and no learning, sedition if transcribed with intent. The night you were summoned to the Qiangqing precinct, alone, unusually junior, why him? Who arranged that? What is he to the inner quarters? Nothing you have ever done is a crime. Everything you have ever done can be made into one. That is what the depot is for, and lying in the dark you finally understand the sealed face, the eunuch face. The face you learned at 16 and have worn so long you forgot it was armour. It is the face of people who live their whole lives as an open case file, waiting to see if it will ever be assigned an investigator. 2 days later, it is. A runner comes to the hall at mid-morning, and the hall goes still, and the runner reads one name off a slip, and the name is yours. They do not take you to the depot's prison outside the walls, and later you will understand that this detail saved your life before a single question was asked. Prisoners who cross into that building acquire in the palace's eyes a smell that never washes out. Instead you are walked by 2 escorts who do not touch you and do not speak to a duty hall in the northeast service quarter that the depot has borrowed for the inquiry and made to kneel in an anteroom on bare brick and left there for hours. I want you to actually be there for this part, because the waiting is the first instrument, and it is used with complete deliberation. The anteroom is unheated. The brick under your knees is winter brick, and its cold comes up in stages you learn one by one. First the skin, then a deep joint ache, then a numbness you are grateful for, then worse than the ache, the tremble, your thighs shivering in slow waves you cannot stop, so that when you are finally called you will walk in already shaking, and they know that. That is why the room is unheated. Nothing in this building is accidental. Down the corridor, at intervals, you hear sounds, a door, footsteps. Once, briefly through some interior wall, a voice raised not in pain but in pleading, the specific looping rhythm of a man repeating the same 3 sentences, and you cannot hear the words and you do not need to. You can hear the shape. I didn't. I never. Ask anyone. I didn't. I never. And then a door closes somewhere and the shape is gone. You kneel on the brick and you do what every generation of the frightened has done. You rehearse. And here your whole strange life quietly assembles behind you like a formation. Because rehearsing testimony is document work, and documents are the one thing on this earth you truly know. Somewhere in the 3rd hour, the terror doesn't vanish, but it moves aside, the way it does at the desks when a deadline is impossible and the hand simply starts. You stop rehearsing protestations. Protestations are what the pleading shape down the corridor is made of, and you start building an archive. Dates, registers, log entries. The 10th month recall, which clerk signed the release, which shelf, which box number, who carried it, when it went back. Your own 2 contacts with the jade registers, years cold, both logged in hands, not your own. You build it the way you would build a fair copy, no flourish, no defence, no adjectives, and by the time the door opens you are not a man protesting innocence. You are a man delivering an inventory. The interrogator is younger than you expected, perhaps 40, with a scholar's soft hands and a writing desk of his own, and that desk is the second thing that saves you, because you understand it instantly. Everything here becomes a transcript, and transcripts go upstairs. And this man's product is not your pain. His product is a document his superiors can use, and you, of all the terrified men who will kneel on this brick this month, know exactly what makes a document usable. He asks. You answer. He circles, doubles back, lays small traps of misstated dates, and you correct the dates, politely, precisely, with box numbers, and you watch. You actually watch. His brush hesitate and then write your corrections down, because they are checkable and correct, and they make his transcript stronger. And somewhere in the 2nd hour the temperature of the room changes, not the air. The proceeding, as it dawns on both of you at the same time that you're no longer exactly a suspect. You have become something more useful, a witness who can read registers. He begins asking you how the archive actually works, recall procedures, who can touch what, and you tell him, fully, because none of it is secret and all of it is exculpatory. The system's own paperwork laid out plainly shows the theory's holes, shows that the recalled page was requested by a routine order, originating outside your hall entirely. He asks about dung. Here is the ledge on which your soul balances, and I will not pretend the choice is made from courage. It is made at 4 in the afternoon by a man who has knelt for 9 hours, out of materials no purer than exhaustion, professional instinct and the memory of Shanxi songs. You do not defend dung. Defense is what guilt buys. You describe him, in inventory language, his duties, his hand. Mediocre, sir. The smudged sheet was recopied because his line spacing drifted. You can see the drift in the archived copy. It is characteristic. No one plotting theft requests to recopy a page, and then copies it badly. And the interrogator's brush stops, and he looks at you. And something passes over his face that is almost amusement, and he says, You're telling me the page proves his innocence because his calligraphy is poor? I am telling you what the page shows, sir. The page is in box 411. Dark has fallen when they release you. No apology, no verdict. Releases here are just doors that open. You walk back through the lanes and your knees will not fully straighten for 3 days, and Ruyi, who has been standing in the cold near the well lane since the shift change because the lanes told her, as the lanes tell everything, sees you come around the corner and does not run to you. Running is visible, but walks fast and grips your sleeve with a starch-smelling hand, hard enough to bruise, and neither of you says one word, and that grip, that single silent grip in the dark, you will still be able to feel on your arm when you're 70. Deng comes back 11 days later. They did not break his hands. The hall's collective held breath releases at that, but they broke something less visible. He never sings again, not once in all the years after, and his stammer, which used to vanish, becomes permanent, and he flinches at the shift-change drum for the rest of his life, and the palace's ledger records the incident as resolved without charges, and that phrase, resolved without charges, is the closest thing to mercy the machine knows how to write. And the cup. You will love this. You will hate this. In the spring, a dredging crew cleaning the ornamental watercourse behind the Yikun Palace finds it in the silt, unbroken, where it had evidently been knocked by a startled cat or a careless sleeve some night in the 12th month. And the finding is reported quietly. And absolutely nothing changes for anyone, because the investigation had long since stopped being about the cup, if it ever was, and the depot's report, which used your testimony, your box numbers, your line spacing argument, had already served its actual purpose in the war between agencies, a war in which your directorate gave ground, and 2 senior men you never met were transferred to the Nanjing establishment, which is the palace's way of burying the living. Eunuch Wei summons you when it's all over. Tangerine peel, camphor, the carp mouth. He looks at you a long time. Box 411, he says at last. They are repeating that upstairs, do you know, as a joke. But they are repeating it, and your name travels attached, he chews. I told you once to be illegible. You disobeyed me. You went in there and made yourself extremely legible as a ledger, and it worked. And I have been sitting here for a day deciding whether you were brilliant or lucky. Which did you decide, sir? That in this palace, Wei says, the two are not distinct substances. He pushes a slip across the desk. It is transfer notice, 6th grade, Registrar of the Inner Archive, his own grade, you realise. He has just promoted you to his own level, or someone above him has, using his brush to do it, and his face as he watches you understand this is entirely unreadable, and it occurs to you, with a feeling like a floor becoming glass, that you may just have been collected on, that the grain investment may just have paid its first real dividend, and that you will never, as long as you both live, know whether this man is your benefactor, your broker, or simply the palace itself wearing a fat man's face. Well, says Wei, go and register something. You're 28. You have been inside the walls for 16 years. You've survived the knife, the pole, the winters, and now the machine's own gaze. And the strange thing, the thing you could never explain to the boy on the plank, is that walking back down the lane with the slip in your sleeve, past the sweepers, under the golden roofs going rose-coloured in the evening, what you feel is not triumph and not relief. What you feel is that the palace has finally fully digested you, that there is no version of you left anywhere, even in your own chest, that stands outside these walls looking in. The lanes are your veins now. The drum is your pulse. You are home. That is the horror and the comfort and the truth. And inside these walls, the three were never different things. Now the years begin to move differently, the way they do in the middle of a life, and I want to give you 3 of the days that stand out of the blur because they are the days you yourself will return to later, lying awake in an old man's shallow sleep. The first is the Lantern Festival of your 31st year, the 15th night of the first month, the first full moon of the new year, and it is the one night the palace decides annually to be beautiful on purpose. For weeks beforehand, the Directorate of Palace Delights, and yes, that is a real agency, there are 24 and one of them is Delights, has been assembling the Lantern Mountain in front of the Gate of Heavenly Purity. A scaffold of timber several stories tall, dressed in thousands of lanterns, gauze lanterns painted with the 100 boys at play, horn lanterns glowing like held breath, revolving lanterns whose paper horsemen chase each other around, the candles rising heat forever and never gain a stride. Fireworks crews from the bell and drum office have buried their charges in the courtyards, and the whole inner court, the emperor, the consorts, the princes, the great eunuchs in their python robes comes out into the cold to watch fire. Your archive stands duty that night with everyone else, posted along the routes with lanterns, and so you see it, all of it, from 30 feet away. The Wanli Emperor, the man whose cough you once orbited, now heavier, slower, walking with the gait his bad legs and his bad temper have made famous among people who are wise enough never to describe it aloud, and beside him noble consort Jung in furs, laughing at something, her breath a gold cloud in the lantern light, the most dangerous location in the empire wrapped in sable laughing. And the fireworks go up, and here is what nobody tells you about standing inside a firework display in a courtyard of stone. The sound does not come from the sky. It comes from everywhere. The walls throw it back and forth so that each burst is a physical blow through the chest, and the golden roofs light up green, then peony red, then white, 10 acres of glazed tile flashing like a sea, and burning debris hisses down into the snow with little serpent sounds, and the smoke smell. Sulphur and willow charcoal sits in your robe for days, and the fire brigades, eunuchs all, stand in the shadows at every corner with their hooks and their water butts, sweating in the cold, because everyone remembers that palaces burn. This palace has burned. Whole halls of it, twice in living memory, and the same festival that makes the court gasp makes the fire eunuchs age. And you stand there with your lantern, one glowing cell in the great illuminated organism, and you watch the paper horsemen chase each other around their candles, and you think of your village, where on this night they will be carrying, if the harvest allowed lanterns at all this year, a few dozen up the hill path to the shrine, and you feel the feeling that has no name in any language you know, the feeling of standing inside the most beautiful thing your civilization can produce, as a component of it, owned by it, and being pierced, at the exact same instant, by the memory of a hill path you will never walk again. Both true, neither yielding. That is a eunuch's festival. Hold both. Keep your face sealed. Mind your lantern. The second day is the day you climb the hill. There is a hill directly north of the palace, just outside the walls, made by men. Coal Hill, Mason, piled from the earth, dug for the palace moats 2 centuries ago, planted with pines, crowned with pavilions. Eunuchs of sufficient grade cross to it on errands to the Northern Service precincts, and in your 34th year an errand and a spring afternoon, and a superior's indifference align, and you climb it, alone, for no logged reason at all, which is itself the most illicit pleasure you have had in a decade. The path switchbacks up through the pines, and pine resin in spring sun is a smell your nose had filed away with childhood, and your legs, desk legs, archive legs, burn at the climb, and then the trees open at the top pavilion and you turn around. And there it is, the whole of it, the thing you have lived inside for 22 years and never once seen. The Forbidden City from Coal Hill is the single greatest view in the Empire, and it is kept, like everything else, for almost no one. The palace lies below you, complete, symmetrical, the great halls riding their white marble terraces like ships on frozen surf, the golden roofs running south in ranks toward the smoke haze of the city, and the geometry that at ground level exists only as walls forever turning you, here resolves into its true shape, a diagram, a mandala, an argument in architecture that the universe has a centre, and you are looking at it. You can see the axis, the invisible line the whole world is organised on, running from the bell tower behind you, under your feet, through the throne halls, out the great southern gates, and onward, in theory, through the Empire, to everywhere. And you can see the lanes. That is what undoes you. From up here you can see into the service quarters, the narrow grey capillaries between the golden organs, and you can see tiny blue-grey figures moving in them, carrying, sweeping, hauling, hundreds of them, thousands. The shift you know by drumbeat made suddenly visible as a circulation, and one of those dots is old Pang, who is 68 now and still copying, and one of them is Deng, silent Deng, and one of them in the starching yards at this hour, hanging linen you cannot see but know, is Ruyi. And you stand on the hill with the wind moving the pines, and you weep, without sound, with a sealed face, the way you do everything, for reasons you could not sort into a register if your life required it. The beauty, the waste, the scale, the sister who ate bark, the father with the silver, the boy on the plank who could never have imagined that the machine he was being fed to was, from one hill in spring, the most beautiful object human beings had ever made. You climb down. You complete the errand. The log for that afternoon shows nothing unusual, and the log, as you of all men know, is what happened. The third day is smaller than the others, and it is the one you will return to most. It is an autumn evening in your late 30s, nothing attached to it. The 9th month, chrysanthemums in pots along the archive lane because some office up the hill ordered beauty, and beauty was duly delivered and invoiced. Rui has traded shifts to sit with you on the well coping, the same coping, your marriage bench of 15 years, and she is sewing a button back onto your court robe while the light goes, because she says your stitches shame the household, and your cracking roasted chestnuts, which stain your fingers and burn them, and passing her every second one, and the palace is doing its evening sounds, the sweepers, the far kitchens, the bell, and she says, not looking up from the button, if we had been born other people, in another place, we would have had grandchildren by now. The needle goes through the cloth with a tiny gritted sound. You crack a chestnut. Somewhere over the wall, a whole man is calling his actual son home in an ordinary voice, and the sound carries into the lanes, the way outside sounds sometimes cruelly do. If we'd been born other people, you say, we would have starved in the Wanli floods, or I would be dead on the northern frontier, and you would be a stranger's wife in a village under 6 feet of river. You always do the accounting. It is the only thing I was ever taught. She ties off the thread, bites it, smooths the button with her thumb, and looks at the robe, your 6th grade robe, on her lap in the last light, and says, "Then account for this." And what she means, the coping, the chestnuts, the button, the 20 years of stolen dusks, cannot be entered in any register the palace keeps, and both of you know it, and that is precisely exactly why it is yours. The palace owns your body, your hours, your name, your grade, your death, and the disposition of your corpse. It has never found a column for this. You put a chestnut in her hand. The bell sounds. The light goes. Hold that image. We're going to need it, because the years that come next are the ones that take things away, and the palace, as you have always known, calls in its loans without notice. Old Pang dies first, because of course he does. He was always first at his desk. It is a summer fever, the palace fever, the one that walks the dormitories in the 6th month when the heat sits on the city like a lid, and the canals go green, and it takes him in 9 days, and you sit with him on the last 2 which your grade now permits, in the sick ward run by the Eunuch clinic by the western wall, a long room smelling of moxa smoke and vinegar washes, and the underlying sweetness that every sick ward has had since the beginning of the world. He's lucid at the end in the way the old sometimes are, a final clearing, and he holds your wrist with a hand like a bundle of dry brushes, and says the only sentimental thing you ever heard him say in 30 years, which is, "Your hand was the best I ever checked. I never told you. It would have made you careless." And then, later, near the end, half to himself, the old accounting. 40 of us. 40 of us came up. And he does not finish the count, and after the 3rd watch he does not need to. Here is what happens to a dead eunuch, and you now learn it as next of kin, because old Pang, 40 years inside, has no other kin on earth, and he named you, it turns out years ago in the clinic's register, in that dry brush hand, recipient of effects. The palace does not bury its servants inside the walls. The dead are ritually unclean, and leave by the northern gate before noon, as they have always left, on the same route as the morning pails, and there is a whole quiet industry outside that gate. Eunuch burial societies, mutual associations where serving eunuchs pay in monthly for decades, so that there will be a coffin, a plot in the eunuch cemeteries west of the city, a stone, and someone, paid, but someone, to burn paper for them at Ming, because the bitterest arithmetic of this whole life is that ancestor worship runs on descendants and you have none. An entire civilization's afterlife infrastructure assumes sons, and you are 100,000 men with no sons, so you have built, with pooled copper, a replacement lineage made of money and bylaws. Old Pang paid in for 31 years. His funeral is correct in every detail. 11 men attend. It rains lightly. His effects delivered to you in one small camphor chest are 2 padded robes, a superb inkstone you've coveted since you were 15, his burial society receipts in perfect order, obviously, and, wrapped in blue cloth at the bottom, his bayo in its sealed vessel redeemed from his knifer's family. The receipt folded around it dated 19 years earlier. He had it ready for 19 years. It goes into the coffin with him, as the rite requires, and so old Pang, copyist of the 7th grade, goes to the King of Hell complete, in order, fully documented, and if there is any justice anywhere in any world, the clerks of that court recognize one of their own and wave him through. You are quiet for a long time after that funeral, and then you do the thing you have been deferring for 20 years with an archivist discipline. You go out through the Xuanwu gate on a permitted rest day, to a narrow house whose smell, pepper and old smoke and something underneath, your body remembers before your mind does, and your knees actually weaken on the threshold. 30 years of grade and composure, and the sealed face, and the smell of that house drops you back onto the plank in half a breath. The old knifer is long dead. His son runs the house now, a courteous, prosperous, terrible man, and the beams of the inner room are hung with sealed vessels in their hundreds, each tagged, each a boy, and the son consults a ledger. His family keeps magnificent ledgers, of course they do, and fines you. Your father's name, the village, the year, and names the price. And the price is a fifth of everything you have saved in 30 years, and you pay it. And I want to be clear that you pay it without hesitation, almost with hunger, and you carry the vessel back through the city wrapped in cloth under your arm, on foot, declining the mule cart, holding it the way women hold infants. And if anyone in the lanes thinks anything of agreeing 6th grade eunuch walking very slowly and very carefully through the autumn crowds, they keep it to themselves, because actually, no, they don't think anything of it at all. Everyone knows exactly what he is carrying. Half the men who see him have made, or will make, the same walk. That night you register it into your own effects chest and log it. Force of habit, in your private register of possessions, and you sit looking at the entry for a while. Item self recovered. And then, because you are alone and the lamp is low and no transcript will ever be made, you put your face into your cracked ink-stained hands, and you stay that way until the oil burns out. The rain, meanwhile, is rotting in place above your head, and from the archive you watch it rot with a documentary precision no minister outside the walls can match. The Emperor has not held a general audience in years. Offices stand vacant across the empire because he will not sign the appointments. There are entire ministries running on a single exhausted vice minister. Censors submit memorials of raw desperation, some of scalding rudeness, men throwing their careers and occasionally their lives at the silence, and the silence absorbs them. The memorials come in, and they are logged and boxed, and they are not answered, and box by box, year by year, your archive fills with the Empire's unanswered mail, and you, registrar, walk the shelf rows at year's end with the Count, and no one else alive, possibly including the Emperor, grasps as physically as you do the size of the refusal, because you have to keep ordering shelves. The wars come, the great costly wars in the northwest and in Korea, and the silver drains, and the mine taxes go out, collected by eunuchs, your kind, hated commissioners scouring the provinces, and the reports of what they do out there come back through your rooms too. And some of them make you ashamed in a way you have no one to confess to, because out there, in the Empire, the word for what you are and the word for what those men do has become the same word. And one grey afternoon in your 46th year, a Hanlin compiler comes to the archive with a permit, researching precedents. A man of perhaps 35, brilliant, exhausted, contemptuous, and as you pull boxes for him he says, "Not really to you, because one does not really speak to furniture. 10,000 memorials in this room and not one answered. When the histories are written, they will say the dynasty died of eunuchs." And you tie the box cords and check the tags and say nothing, because the sealed face is 50 years deep now. But walk in the rows that evening with your lamp past the shelves of silence, you compose, in your head, in perfect memorial format, top margin correct, taboo characters avoided, the reply you will never submit. Your servant respectfully observes that the documents were all delivered. Your servant respectfully observes that the doors were all opened, the lamps all trimmed, the ink all ground every day for 40 years by the persons your excellency describes. Your servant respectfully observes that the dynasty is not dying of its slaves. And then you put the reply where you put everything else that cannot exist, and you trim the lamps, and you go on. Rhee's hands go first. Decades in the starching rooms, decades of lye water and winter troughs, and in her 50s the joints of her fingers swell and set like knots in wood, and the palace does with worn-out palace women what it does with everything worn out. It processes them. There is release, in fact, a documented mercy. Aging palace women can be discharged to relatives, and for one whole winter the two of you circle the idea at the well, coping without touching it, because her relatives are a flooded village that exists nowhere, and a discharged woman with no family and ruined hands has been given, in the language of the documents you know too well, her freedom, which is the palace's most economical punishment. So you do the other thing. You spend. Your grade buys quiet arrangements. Silver buys quieter ones. She transfers to the clothing storehouses, light duty counting and tagging, registrar's work, honestly. And when she laughs at that, at the two of you ending as matching clerks, the laugh still does what it did in the well lane when you were 24. It still empties you out and refills you with something better, and her hands still smell faintly of starch. They always will, the way yours smell of ink. And on the coping in the evenings you sit, two catalogued people, hand in ruined hand, and let the bell divide the time. She dies in your 58th year, in the 2nd month, of the winter chest sickness that sweeps the northwestern quarters, quickly, in 6 days, which the physician calls a mercy, and which is won. You're permitted at the end, arrangements again, silver again, and the last fully clear thing she says, on the 4th day, holding your fingers in her swollen ones, is housekeeping, is entirely her. Your grey robe, the collar's going, give it to Dung's boy to take to the menders before it opens. And then, later, at the very edge, not housekeeping, you said things, all those years, a long breath. You said things. Palace women leave by the northern gate before noon. There is a temple west of the city where the burial societies of the serving women keep their ground, and her stone is small and correct, and you have the mason add below her name 4 characters, and pay him not to ask questions. Shan Yujiyan. She was good at saying things. It is not a standard funerary formula. It will puzzle scholars if any scholar ever stoops to read a palace woman's stone. Let it puzzle them. Deng's boy, I should explain, because the phrase went past you just now the way it went past me. Deng, silent Deng, in his 50s adopted a nephew, which eunuchs of means may do, a son on paper, a lineage by ledger, the palace's substitute for everything being, as always, a document. And the boy is real and warm and calls him father and will burn paper for him. And half the senior eunuchs you know have done the same, buying with silver the thing the knife took, and it works, roughly, approximately, the way a lamp works as a sun. You never do it. You're asked why more than once by men doing you the kindness of worrying about your afterlife, and you give the sealed face answers, and the true answer you give only once to Dung, on the well coping, both of you old. I had the thing the paper imitates. I don't want the paper. Deng, who has not sung in 40 years, is quiet for a while, and then he says with his permanent stammer, the longest sentence you have heard from him since the 12th month of the cup. then you are the only rich man inside these walls. The emperor dies in the summer of 1620, in the 48th year of the reign, having outlasted everyone's patience, including possibly his own, and the palace does the thing it does supremely well, the thing it exists for. It converts a cosmic catastrophe into procedure. The wailing is scheduled. The white mourning cloth goes up by the bolt, tens of thousands of bolts, and it moves through Rui's old storehouses, counted and tagged by other hands now. The bells toll the morning count, and the whole city goes to its knees in rings around you. And then the procedure convulses, because the new emperor, the neglected heir, the son whose status your whole adult life's politics were fought over, reigns for 29 days and dies, the red pill case, the wildest month the inner court has known in a century, and then a 15-year-old grandson is on the throne. A boy who loves carpentry, genuinely loves it, is genuinely gifted at it, and cares for nothing else. And into the space where that boy's attention should be steps a eunuch, Wei Zhongxian. No relation to your old Wei, who is 30 years dead, though when you first hear the name you feel the tangerine peel chill anyway. You know him, slightly, the way one knows anyone after a lifetime in the lanes. An illiterate gambler who cut himself as a grown man to escape his debts. Charming, patient and attached, with perfect instinct decades early, to exactly the right obscure household. The household that now contains the throne. Old Wei's third rule, walking on two legs. Choose your patron before your patron is obvious. He chose. And now he rises and rises, and the depot swells under him into something the old depot only sketched, and the purges begin, real ones, the kind you were shown in miniature with a jade cup, now performed at imperial scale, ministers dying in the prisons, and honest men across the empire forced to build shrines to a living eunuch as if he were a god, and you, past 70 now, semi-retired to a supervisory sinecure in the archives. Watch the thing that everyone always said eunuchs were finally, actually happen. Watch one of your own kind become the monster from the scholar's essays, and you understand two truths at once, and hold them the way you have held every pair of truths since the Lantern Festival, that the scholars were describing something real, and that Wei Zhongxian is no more what a eunuch is than the drunk outside the wine shop, falsetto and laughing, was what a man is. You retire fully in the first year of the Carpenter Emperor's little brother, the last emperor, though no one yet knows to call him that. There is a procedure, of course. Your grades and titles are read into a register. Your keys, and by the end you hold many, are surrendered against a receipt. And you check the receipt, and the young registrar who wrote it watches you check it with the special horror of a young professional being audited by the ancestor of his profession, and you find one box number transposed and you make him rewrite it. Not out of malice, out of love, though he will not understand that for 30 years, and then you walk out of the archive where you spent 60 years, and down the lane and out on your own 2 feet in your own robe through the northern gate. Before noon, you notice that. Of course you notice that. 60 years of watching everything leave by the northern gate before noon, the pails, the dead, the discharged, the disgraced, and now you, upright, pensioned, complete, your bao in your chest among your effects, walking out into the enormous, unwalled, terrifying north of the city where the light comes from every direction at once, and no drum tells anyone anything. You turn around once, outside the gate. The wall goes up red forever. Above it, just the golden roof ridges, and their processions of little ceramic beasts marching toward the sky, going nowhere, magnificently, as they have your whole life, as they will after everyone. Well, you say to them out loud, an old man talking to a roof, alarming a chestnut seller. Mind your lantern. And you walk north toward the temple districts where a room is waiting, and an old age, and the last part of this story, which is the quietest part, and which begins, as everything in your life has begun, with a bell. The temple is called Huguo, or near enough one of the Western temples where the eunuch societies have endowed halls for their retired, and the bell that wakes you now is a temple bell, which is a different animal entirely from a palace drum. The drum commanded. The bell only mentions. It mentions dawn and lets you decide what to do about it, and for the first month of your retirement this nearly breaks you, the way deep-sea creatures are broken by the surface, 60 years of every hour arriving with orders, and now the hours arrive empty-handed, and you lie on your kang at the 5th watch, awake to the minute, decades of drum in your blood, with nowhere whatsoever to be, and you learn that freedom, taken late enough, is just one more thing that has to be survived. You survive it the way you survived everything, procedure. You build a day and you keep it, up at the 5th watch, because your body permits nothing else. Tea, the courtyard, where the old men gather and understand what this courtyard is, ashore. Everyone washed up on it came from inside some wall or other. Palace eunuchs, princely household eunuchs, a few grand old wrecks who held the 4th grade, and one, immensely aged, who claims to have carried lamps in the previous reign. But one, and no one checks anyone's claims, because the courtyard's single law, unwritten, absolute, is that the accounts are closed. Rank is over, the ledgers are over. A man who spent 40 years above you in grade now spends the mornings losing to you at chess, cheerfully, and the sun comes over the temple roof at the hour the sun chooses, and pigeons, someone's flock, wheel over the district with whistles tied to their tails, a chord in the sky, rising, falling, and you sit with your tea in the sound and you think, most mornings, of specific people. That is what this shore is for. The living carry the dead the way you carried the vessel through the autumn crowds. Slowly, wrapped, both arms. You teach a little. The temple runs a charity school, and it turns out that an old man who has taught characters in frozen dirt, and then taught by Hanlin academicians in an unheated hall, has opinions about teaching, and the neighbourhood boys learn their strokes from a brush that once made fair copies for the vermilion. Not that they believe that, not that you tell them. One boy has a hand, a real one, and you keep him after the others one evening and slide his sheet back across the desk and tap one character and hear yourself say, "Who taught you to hold the brush?" And the whole hall of your life echoes, and Master Shen, 70 years dead, stands briefly at your shoulder in the lamp smell, and you give the boy the speech, your version, the Lane version. Your circumstances were decided for you. Your hand was not. Copy it 500 times. He does. They always do, the real ones. It is the closest you come to a son, and it is not close, and it is not nothing. News comes over the temple wall, the way it always came down the lanes, and the news of these years is bad and gets worse. Wei Zhongxian falls, the carpenter emperor dies, the new young emperor is earnest and doomed, the treasury is empty, the northeast is lost, famine walks whole provinces, and the words the tea sellers use, rebel armies, come closer every year, from names of far places to names of near ones. You are past 80. You will be spared the end, and you know men in this courtyard will not be, and you are old enough now to feel the guilt of that without arguing with it. The dynasty you were fed to at 11 is dying, not of its slaves, not of its ministers, not even of its emperors exactly, but the way you have watched everything inside walls die, of deferral, box by box, shelf by shelf, of unanswered mail. Your body keeps its own ledger to the end. The hands, always the hands. The winter cracks come back each year to the same knuckles, faithful as festivals, and the ridge of muscle along your right forearm is still there, useless now, a monument, and the flat callus on your right shoulder where the pole rode 70 years ago, and the copyists ache across the tops of the feet when rain comes, and rising from sitting you make. You are aware the exact set of movements old Pang made, the movements you and he could have identified each other by, and somewhere every day your fingers, without instruction, practice characters against your thigh, small ghost strokes, the hand refusing retirement, and the character they write most. You notice once, watching your own fingers as if they were someone else's, is the one from the frozen hall. 500 times. Endure. In your final winter, you set your effects in order, because of course you do. The register is current. The burial society receipts paid in full for 50 years are in the camphor chest with the robes. The superb ink stone, old Pang's, goes to the boy with the hand, with a letter he must not open for 10 years, and what the letter says is nobody's business but his, and he will read it at 30 in a country that no longer exists, and it will do to him what such letters do. The vessel, the blue-wrapped vessel, sits where it has sat for 30 years, ready, and you have written out for the society in your best hand, because it will be the last official document of your life, and you were the best hand old Pang ever checked. The instructions, the vessel into the coffin, so placed thus that the man may arrive where he is going complete, and be recognized, and be let in. And on the last night, which you do not know is the last night, though the body knows, the body always knows it kept every ledger first, you lie on the kang in your small room with the charcoal ticking in the brazier, and the temple is quiet, and the city beyond it is quiet, and far off, very far, in the direction of the walls, a watchman's clapper goes, 2 dry knocks, the second watch, the sound sliding on the winter air the way sound does, the way it slid along the lanes when you were 24 with a mooncake on your fingers, and you lie in the dark at the end of the strangest life a human being could be handed. The boy from the millet fields who slept inside the centre of the world, who was owned entirely and yet smuggled a whole life through, friendship and craft and grief and chestnuts and one long love affair conducted entirely on a well-coping, and you find that the accounting you were teased about for 60 years, comes out at the very end, simpler than you ever dared enter it in any register. It was terrible life. It was my life. I kept it. The clapper again, farther now. The charcoal settles. The dark is soft and total, like the third watch in the archive lanes, like the inside of a sleeve, and somewhere in it your mother is calling you in from the millet rows in a voice you suddenly, after 80 years, remember perfectly. Every feature restored, nothing smeared at all, and you go. Come back now, slowly. There's no drum here. Nothing is required of you. Come back across the centuries and notice as you come what happened to that place, because it is still there. That is the strange thing you can hold as you drift tonight. The walls he lived inside are standing right now, this minute, in the dark of Beijing. The same red walls, the same golden roofs with their little ceramic beasts still marching toward the sky, still going nowhere, magnificently. The dynasty fell a few years after our man's quiet death, and another dynasty moved into the same rooms, and it kept eunuchs too. And then that dynasty fell, and the last palace eunuchs, and this is true, the very last of them, lived long enough to see photographs, to see electric light strung through the lanes they had walked with lanterns, to give interviews, old men in the 20th century with the smooth faces and the early wrinkles, telling historians about the drum, the kang, the knife, the vessels on the beam. The last of them died within living memory. There are people alive tonight who spoke with men who stood night watches inside those walls. It is that recent. It is that real. And the palace is a museum now. 1 million ordinary people a month walk the great axis where no ordinary person could stand. And children run on the gold brick floors and no one kneels. And the lanes, the narrow grey lanes where the whole hidden life happened, most visitors never see them at all. They walk the ceremonial spine and never know that a foot to either side behind the walls of the walls is the entire country where our man lived. The wells are capped. The archive halls hold exhibitions. On Coal Hill, on any clear evening, tourists stand where a 40-year-old registrar once wept with a sealed face, and they photograph the same view, the greatest view in the empire, free now to anyone, and the golden roofs still catch the last light the same way, because tile does not know what century it is. So the walls outlasted everything, and the people inside them left almost no mark, which was the design. But you spent tonight with one of them. You know what the bricks felt like under his knees. You know the smell of the ink and the camphor and the starch. You know what it cost to carry a shoulder pole, and what it cost to refuse a cup of tea, and what a chestnut was worth on a well coping in autumn. History kept the emperor's names and lost his, and tonight, for a few hours, you reversed that, and that is not nothing. That is in fact the only justice the dead ever really get. Someone, lying comfortably in the dark, 400 years downstream, briefly living their day. And now his day is over, and so is yours. Feel where you are. The bed under you, holding your whole weight, asking nothing back. The warmth you're wrapped in, that ordinary miracle, warmth without a coal quota, without a brazier boy. Warmth that just stays. No drum will sound at the 5th watch. No register holds your name. No one will inspect your hands in the morning. Whatever your day held, it did not hold a bamboo pole or a knifer's question. And whatever tomorrow holds, you will meet it as a free person, which is a sentence that every single soul in tonight's story would have wept to hear said of them, and it is said of you. And you get it for nothing, the way we get all our inheritances without noticing, the way you're getting this warmth right now. You're warm enough, safe enough, tired enough. You have a bed and a roof and a morning that belongs to you. That's more than the centre of the world could offer its 10,000 servants. That's enough. Let the palace grow small now. Let it shrink to what it looks like from Coal Hill, the diagram, the golden mandala in the haze, and then smaller, a painting, a stamp of red and gold, and let it slide away south down its own great axis, taking its drums with it, taking its bells, growing quiet, growing dim. The sounds are settling, the way sounds settle over any city, any century. Somewhere the last carts, somewhere a dog, somewhere water moving. The night watch of the whole world changing shifts, and none of it needs you, and none of it will call your name. Your eyes are heavy. Let them be heavy. You've been carrying a whole life tonight, 80 years of it. The plank and the pole and the brush and the coping, and you can set it down now, all of it. The way he set down his keys against a receipt and walked out through the northern gate into the wide, unwalled light. Set it down. Tomorrow there will be your own small duties. Tomorrow there will be your own lanes to walk, your own accounts, your own bells. Tomorrow always comes, in every dynasty, and it always brings the same things, work and food and other people and weather. But that's tomorrow. Tomorrow belongs to the drum. Right now belongs to you. The same as last night. The same as every night humans have ever lain down tired in the dark. The same as a boy on a Kang in 1580, 30 bodies breathing around him, wind combing 10,000 roof edges above. The same as an old man in a temple room, charcoal ticking, clapper fading. The same as all the nights stretching out ahead of you, waiting patiently in their long, quiet lane. Centuries will pass. The cities you know will change beyond recognition. The rooms you have lived in will hold other lives. The machines will be replaced by machines no one has imagined, and the names that fill the news tonight will thin out into footnotes and then into silence, the way the names always do. But people will still live where you live, still work, still worry, still fall in love on whatever they have instead of a well-coping, still teach children to hold whatever they hold instead of a brush, still lie down at the end of long days, exactly like this, and feel sleep come up around them like warmth from a Kang, and let go. Some things don't change. The tired body doesn't change. The need for rest at the end of a long day, that doesn't change. The human heart, keeping its small private register that no palace ever finds a column for, that doesn't change either. So let it come. Let sleep take you the way the dark took the lanes, one lantern at a time. Let the world fade the way the golden roofs fade at dusk, rose, then grey, then gone. Let the noise quiet. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop, like a brush lifted from the paper at the end of the last character of a Longfair copy, the ink already drying, the work already done. You've earned this rest, not from an emperor, from your own long day. Take it. The bell is only mentioning the hour now. It isn't commanding anything. It never will again. Breathe out. Let the walls go dark and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.